Board of Trustees meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Colwood,
Present.
Trustee Bowery,
Present.
Trustee Clendine, absent. Trustee Cohen,
Present.
Trustee Liger,
Present.
Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Smith,
Present.
Chairman Calendar,
Present.
Oh, this
All right.
time.
Next
6
item.
present, 2 absent.
Call for this kind of
Thank you.
Huh?
call.
Yeah, but she didn't respond.
I'm sorry. Good morning. I'm here.
Okay,
All right. So we don't have any comments or suggestions from retirees.
you have
We
7.
of April 23rd, 2020. Any corrections, deletions, additions? On April, no one?
This is my issue. Corrections were done before, Dr. Collins.
Excuse me?
Corrections were submitted and we submitted the amended minutes.
Oh,
Okay, I would
already
move to accept the minutes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nip, this was approved?
No, well, I'm saying that corrections were sent in after we submitted the minutes and we amended the minutes, so Trustee Cohen just moved to approve the minutes.
I had two areas I wanted to correct. Page 2, made by Trustee Bowery. You said to seek additional financial. There was some word missing after financial.
I don't,
Try to seek additional financial assistance.
where's that?
That's on page 2
Yeah.
above Chairman's report. The sentence, Trustee Bory recommended not to rush with abatements until given site tenants try to seek additional financial assistance.
Try to see, not to rush for abatements until try to.
Do you see that?
Yes, we see it.
A word is missing.
There should not be a word after financial. Or is it financial?
Probably financial assistance.
Financial assistance.
It should be assistance.
Understand?
It should just be financials, the noun, the plural noun, I think.
No. It should be financial assistance.
Financial assistance.
Okay. Another staff attendance, Retire Coley. She's still the administrative assistant to the board, not former. Okay. Trustee Cohen, you want to make a motion?
For corrected.
You're on mute. He's on mute.
Right, I move to, as amended, to accept the secretary's minutes as amended.
Second.
Trustee Colwood,
Yes.
Trustee Bowery,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Liger,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Calendar,
Yes.
6 yes, 1 absent.
Minutes have been approved. Need approval of the special meeting held on May 7, 2020. I need a motion for approval.
Mr. Chair, I move. Second,
Who moved it, ma'am?
Trustee Smith.
Trustee Calwood,
Yes.
Trustee Bowery,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Liger,
Yeah.
Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Smith. Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Calendar,
Yes.
Chair 6 yes, 1 absent.
Sure, the minutes of 5/7/2020 have been approved. Communication and correspondence.
Correspondence dated April 21, 2020. Addressed to Austin L. Nibbs, Administrator, CEO, Government Employees Retirement System, 3438 Comprehensive Garden, GRS Complex, Suite 1, St. Thomas, VI 00802 5750. There, Administrator, Mr. Nibbs. Our auditor, Burt Smith and Company, is conducting an audit of the United States Virgin Islands, other post-employee benefits, OPEB, as of September 30, 2018. As part of their audit, Burt Smith and Company is required to review and assess the accuracy of the census data submitted to the actuary. The auditor have selected a sample of beneficiaries for review and are requesting the relevant supporting documentation from your agency. You will be provided with instructions and access to the auditor's secure portal. Once received, please use the website. I'm not going to read that into the record. To address the auditor's request and upload the documentation. Once uploaded, please email KateBridgewater@BurtSmithAndCompany.com to verify that the documents have been received. Please direct all inquiries concerning this request to our auditor via email at KateBridgewater@BurtSmithCompany.com. Sincerely, Clarina Modest Elliott, Executive Assistant Commissioner, DOF. Copies to Court Calwood, Senior Commissioner, Dennis Jeremiah, GRS CFO. Letter dated May 1st, 2020, GRS 3438 Comprehensive Garden, St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, 00802. Kind attention of Mr. Nibbs. Dear Mr. Nibbs, press release of May 1st, 2020, mall operating hours. In view of your press release, I would like to apprise you of discussions held today between store owners. A total of 22 businesses occupying 43 bays within the mall have decided that they are not able to open their businesses under the current environment. A couple of businesses that cater to Virgin Islanders will open for the week of May 4th through May 9th for Mother's Day. Thank you. Yours sincerely, Ram Mipuri, HMA. Means Evenside Merchants Association. Email from Mango Ver. It's good. It's dated Tuesday, April 28, 2020. Good afternoon, Mr. Nibbs. It's in regards to Payroll Protection Program, SBA. Let me introduce myself. I am Mr. Manu Ver, renting two locations in Building 3A and B, Shoppers Haven and Caribbean Gems. Been your tenants since over 21 years. Thank you for your email and suggestion.
You need my phone.
Thank you for your email and suggestions to apply for PPP. Reply to your email is I have applied for PPP loan on April 8, 2020. I have followed up with the Banco Popular yesterday, 4/27/2020, and I got email back today stating that they have not received any status from SBA. Once they do, they will advise me accordingly. According to PPP loan, we are obligated to utilize minimum 75% towards payroll for forgiveness of the loan. Being small family-owned business based on fewer employees, we have smaller payroll structure. Our expected PPP loan amount is smaller as well. Therefore, after meeting all the obligations of the payroll, federal taxes, utilities, and health insurance, I will be left with very minimum amount to share for the rents of 3 locations. 2 locations at Haven Site and 1 at Crown Bay. As you know, On March 14, 2020, the 2019-2020 school seasons came to an abrupt end. Further, the recent news from CDC, in a bid to prevent the spread of COVID-19 on cruise ships, has issued a new directive to extend the no-sail order for at least the next 100 days, that is approximately July 1st, 2020. Having said that, when the cruise ship starts coming into St. Thomas, there will be fewer ships. On one ship days, the ship is docked at Gate 2, that is behind Building 1 and 2. We see little or no foot traffic in Building 3. Considering all the circumstances, we predict our business may start from October 2020 onward. Thus, I am requesting a GRS board to provide a 50% rent reductions for the month of March and a rent abatement for April, May, and June 2020. Hope to hear from you soon. Major Fed, President Sharpers Haven and Caribbean Gems.
I have a question, Mr. Nibs. What happens if we get a 15-page letter?
Excuse me?
What happens if you get a 15-page letter?
I can either ask the chairman not to read it into the record or accept it as
Okay.
being read. If you want me to do that for the rest, I can. Saves me a lot.
I'm just asking, just,
I've done it before. I've asked it, for it not to be read, accept it as being read.
its entirety, if it, that's just me, but go ahead. You don't have any 15 letters, so you could go ahead.
Well, I have a lot of correspondence. It's up to the board. If the board feels that each trustee has a copy of the letter, it's just that it wouldn't be read into the record, and I can ask to be accepted as being read.
Trustees?
My suggestion would be for you to summarize the letter, give the board the essence of it, and submit the entire thing to be part of the record.
But the board already have a copy of all the letters. There's no need to summarize it again because we have copies of the letters.
Well, that's my point. So why are you reading the whole thing again?
Well,
I think-
I think he's summarizing it.
The thing about
I
the,
suppose because
Yeah, that would be my suggestion. That he summarizes.
Mr. Chairman, may indulgence, can we just accept the correspondence, or I can make reference to important correspondence that I think needs to be read into the record, or accept the correspondence that I sent to the board as being read into the records?
If the trustees have no objection, I don't see why not.
I do have a question though. I thought the whole concept of read it into records so it can be submitted for the stenographer to have a record of the correspondence. I understand about the lengthy correspondence and summarization would be fine. But if we don't have, if nothing is read or if nothing is spoken on, I mean, at least say, what, like the recommendation of a summary. First correspondence is to me from this person referencing such and such. You have to acknowledge the fact that this correspondence came from this person so that in the transcribed record, there is some acknowledgement of that mail, that correspondence. I have to read the whole thing, but first letter comes from Mr. such and such from Switzerland in reference to his inability to.
And what he's asking the board, what is it he's asking of the board? I mean, summarize the letter, who it came from, what is it, what he's asking, and the board has the entire letter. We have that, and just ask for the rest of it to be accepted as part of the minute. Full letter. That'd be good for me. I mean, I could see a problem if as I say, if you get a letter that's 110 pages, you'll be here all morning listening to Mr. Nibbs read a letter that we've all read already.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
That would be sort of my concern is before you do all of that, is that there should be an inquiry to ensure that, in fact, the trustees are in receipt of the communication and probably have read it. Because sometimes, the document may not have been read, and sometimes it may depend also on when the documents were received. So before you accept it into the record, there should at least be some inquiry that they have in fact been received and read, so that at least the majority of the trustees are aware of what's contained in the communication in event there needs to be some inquiry or some action taken by the board. I think that's critical.
Also, Attorney Williams, maybe a question should be asked whether or not any of the trustees have any concerns or any questions about his letters.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, what I can do for the next meeting, just like we do in the minutes, we summarize in the minutes. We just give you a one-liner. I received a letter from this, the reason why, what it was. I can do that as a summary and attach it to the correspondence when it's sent out, so we won't have to go through all of this again. That can be done. So
But you would still submit the entire document? With
yes,
the
everything
document?
will be submitted. I'll just put a top sheet, a summary of each correspondence. One sentence. Very short sentence.
Also, Mr. Chairman, in the event a correspondence have to be discussed among the board, then how would we do that? Would we then bring that particular correspondence up in order for us to discuss it? For instance, a person may be asking for rent abatement, and the trustees may not agree, and then we wouldn't have to discuss it in order for us to vote on it.
No, nothing that I suggest prevents it. I mean, I'm suggesting two things. One is that Mr. Nibbs, in his summary, he wrote a summary of the correspondence. I received a piece of correspondence from Little Switzerland. It came from the president. They're asking for whatever, rent abatement, and they're asking for rent abatement because they said the no sale date has been extended. And I have the entire letter with me. It was submitted to you as board members, and at that point is when the board decides whether to ask the question. I mean, we're gonna have to make the decision, right? I mean, if they're asking for rent abatement, we're gonna have to discuss it.
Of course.
So it's so we'll discuss it anyway. I'm not trying to get it out of the. I was up until after midnight last night reading through these things.
Mm.
And I'm sitting here again, listening to Mr. Nibbs reading again.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I agree with Trustee Bori that it should be summarized. If and Mr. Nibbs said he could do a one paragraph or one sentence with all these correspondence, and I concur with that.
Not necessarily one sentence. You need more than one sentence.
No, that's why I said a paragraph. He said a paragraph or one sentence. So.
Right. Okay. To get the point. I mean,
yes.
Mr. Nibbs will have to use the discretion to see how long it's going to be to convey the essence of the letter, and specifically, what is it the letter is asking of the board.
This has been done before. I've asked the board not to read the record, and I just summarize it. So it has been done before.
Yeah, but I don't think we should take an hour on this either.
So let's move on. I'll just read and I will conclude with it and just accept as read, being read.
Trustee
Mr. Chair,
Callwood?
Yara?
Trustee Callwood?
Sorry, yes?
I sent you a note. Sent you a message on your phone.
Oh,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I am not hearing you as clearly as I should. And what I'm afraid of, if I keep letting it go, when you're having a whole conversation, I'm gonna miss stuff.
Okay, I just sent a message to Trustee Callwood.
No, I get that, but I don't know if it's something you can do so you can come through more clearly. Because when you were reading off the agenda, I could have figured out what you were saying, but if you have to give a statement, I'm not hearing you clear enough to make an accurate record.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you hear me clearly?
now I am. So maybe it's when you bend your head or something, but I am now.
Okay.
I'm
Trustee,
sorry.
Trustee Callwood, can you do that?
Okay.
Because I am having difficulty understanding what any all of you are saying also.
I don't know.
So I am asking.
yeah, that's because you have a delay and sometimes you have a drop. The phone line has a delay and a drop.
Mr. Chairman, are you basically asking Trustee Callwood to chair the meeting because of
Yes.
the technical challenges?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, that's Pedro. That was his request. That's why he texted me.
Okay.
Well, he works on fixing his issue. And when he gets it fixed, he'll come back. Mr. Nibbs?
Okay, can I just summarize? I'm gonna go forward with summarizing the balance, okay?
Yes, please. To and from and then summary.
An email dated May 16 from Joel Tranum, the president of Port of Sale, just writing to thank us for the deferral of May and April and May. A letter from Little Switzerland. It's not dated, but it's an email. And it just talked about this problems with tourists having to travel when they will travel, the problem with COVID-19, and also about sustainability of the business, having to pay rent. A letter dated May 21, 2020 to Anthony Hartley, the interim president of WICO, providing him with a listing of accounts receivables that goes back as far as 2012, asking him what course of action was taken in regards to those outstanding receivables. Another letter from Little Switzerland dated, not received on May 21st. Again, the situation with suspension of rent payment. They wanted to suspend rents until July 1, 2020. Again, about the problem with COVID-19. A letter dated May 22nd, 2020 from myself to the Havenside Mall tenants regarding PPP loan. We submitted a survey to them and we have received some responses. A letter dated May 22nd, 2020 from the legislature of the Virgin Islands inviting the GRS to present on Tuesday, August 11, 2020 at 1 p.m. in the L.B. Hartley Legislative Hall in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. Email from Ram McCurry, the president of the Havenside Mall Association, dated May 25th, just saying thank you for keeping in touch. And he wants us to at least keep in, said, well, he's saying that on behalf of the tenants, they informed the letter dated March 31, been acceptable to the tenants. He's saying that I guess the the April and May is not acceptable to the tenants. They're looking for additional deferrals. Letter from Kampala Enterprise dated 5/26/2020. It's in regards to the PPP loan, indicating to us that he did apply and he did receive it. He feels that the rent for the 2 months, April and May, the deferral is not really helpful to his business. And finally, letter dated May 20, 2020 from the Division of Personnel, Dana Clendening Director, requesting GRS participation in the orientation of new employees. That ends.
Thank you, Mr. Nibbs. Chairperson's report.
I hope you can hear me.
Stay close to the computer.
Dory, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I want to applaud and thank the governor and his legal staff for their foresight in vetoing bill number 33-0123, which was requiring great expertise among the DEI board members in the hopes of precluding the impending insolvency of the system. What by the governor were primarily legal issues. My reason hoping for the veto was completely different. If the system is going bankrupt due to growth underfunding by the plan sponsor, the solution is to adequately fund the system, not change the board members or require greater expertise. On February 20th, 2020, the day the bill was to be vetted by the Government Operations Committee, members spent tremendous amounts of time on non-germane issues like Atalanas, Carambola, Fidelity Financial Group, Nikita Financial Group, the stock market, and all areas that they had little knowledge about. No wonder they got it wrong. The bill was intended to take blame from the members of the legislature who had no remedy for fixing the dilemma that they had found themselves in.
Dr. Calendar?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Is your report submitted in the documents that Ms. Coley sent? Did you submit a copy of that? Because I am having a hard time. Do you submit a written? I see you're reading it. Did you submit that?
I'll finish up as quickly as I can. Item number 2, the board has no authority and no desire to reduce the benefits that are being paid to retirees who have been promised an annuity by the government of the Virgin Islands. What will happen is that our annuity will decrease when the system no longer has the funds to make us whole. This was clearly explained by Trustee Bory in his letter to the editor in the Daily News on Tuesday, May 26th. Recently, it was noted that the system was partly to blame for the difficulties that the administration was having with its financing. Everyone should be aware of the fact that the court case was initiated in 1981. If attention had been given to the system's request at that time, or some subsequent time, present problems could have been averted. The government owes the system significant amounts of money. GIs took the government to court in order to get the administration to make payments that we believe were due. There is an axiom that states that trustees should take any action necessary to protect the plan and to ensure continued payment of benefits to current and future retirees and beneficiaries. We were simply carrying out our fiduciary duty. And by the way, GEI had no decision in the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic. end of my report. I will give you a copy, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrator's report.
Good morning. On April 24th, I met with the evaluation committee to select finalists for the Havenside Mall Roof Program project. On April 28th, I met with the evaluation committee with finalists of the Havenside Mall Roof project. On April 30th, site visit with architect, the Havenside Mall fencing project. On May 1, I met with Havenside Mall Roof contractor selected. On May 7th, I attended a special board meeting. On May 8th, had a meeting with the actuaries. On May 11th, I met with the Havenside Mall tenants. On May 13th, I attended Havenside Mall transition meeting with WICO. On May 15th, I attended Havenside Mall monthly management meeting. On May 18th, had a meeting with Havenside Mall management and technician in regards to developing an RFP for replacement of a generator system. On May 19th, I met with Senator Atnell Bobby Thomas. On May 20th, I met with Water Distribution Director, WAPA Distribution Director, pending water issues at Havenside Mall. And I also had a meeting with IG Auditor that same day in regards to return to work issues. As far as the retiree applications, we are now down to 130 applications pending. The majority of the applications are in calendar year 2019, still pending, and so far 2020, we have a balance of 38. Refunds from October 1 through 2019 through April 30th, we have completed 462 cases in tune of $5.1 million. Of that 462, 318 are regular or non-vested employees, tune of $4.8 million. We have 57 cases pending overall. That benefits from October 1, 2019 through April 30, 2020, we have completed 41 cases, amount of $1.4 million. We have 82 cases pending. Regards to the life certificates, which were sent out in January, we have validated 77. We have 8 annuities benefits were suspended, and 11 are pending receipt of the documents. Benefits suspended meaning that we have stopped the annuity checks until we receive a life certificate or a death certificate is received. Annuity payments, the number of retirees as of May 15, payroll 8,708. Cumulative payroll from October 1, 2019 through May 15 with pensioners, $159,937,046.91. We have added 230 retirees to the payroll from October 1 through May 15th. We have deleted 207 retirees from the payroll from October 1, 2019 through May 15, 2020. The growth retiree payroll for the May 15 payroll, $10.7 million. Our member loan portfolio is decreasing. As you know, these the active personal loan, the personal loan should all expire sometime between now and 2024-25. Shouldn't have any more loans, active loans after that period. Only mortgages. As far as operation in St. Croix, we still have a delay in because of the corona situation in regards to the roof situation over in St. Croix. We had an issue with the crystal water fountain in the area there in the bottom, in the first floor. That malfunctioned some time back. The project with the trash dumpster is approximately 60% complete. And we received 2 proposals for the security guard building for the renovation, and one more was requested for 3. We are recommending replacing 3 interior doors for security purposes in regards to active shooter protection. The GRS did have a a training on this a few months ago in regards to the safety of our employees. In regards to the St. Thomas complex, if you have been here recently, you can see we are winding down, and the exterior of the building, the roof, the exterior building is just about complete. It has been painted, and all the work has been done to about 90% complete, 10% more to go. We have an issue with our transformer. 2 transformers are leaking. We need, so we should be replacing those transformers very soon. It must be replaced. The Northern Roof project, we're waiting for the architect's drawing. This is something of importance to us because of the hurricane season. Again, because of the coronavirus, the protective partition and the security desk in the lobby will be constructed as soon as plexiglass. That's what it's. Plexiglass becomes available. I think we did receive those partitions. I think yesterday. Rental and collections as of April 20th, the month of April 20th, we received $110,418.11 for rent and electricity. Total fiscal year to date, we received $842,146.05. Our arrearages, $207,173.89, quite high. The arrearages in rentals, justice, month of April, personnel, month of April, Pleasant, March and April, Rest Care, which is Job Corps, April. Surprise of that, that's a federal program. Housing Finance Authority, April. Arrearages in electrical, justice, February and March, personnel, February and March, Rest Care, Job Corps, February and March, Finance Authority, VI Housing Finance Authority, February and March. My recommendations for rents for the tenants for commercial spaces on Havenside Mall will be presented in a document which will be distributed in a separate report. Any questions?
Trustees, any question for the administrator?
I have one, Ms. Chair. Mr. Nibs, in regards to the arrearages for the government departments from April, what is the reason for that? Is it because of the COVID-19?
I think the letter from Ms. Clendenin, some time back, I submitted a request for poll vote, which was not voted upon. Ms. Clendenin of DOP indicated that OMB had cut their budget, so they were asking for a deferment of rent through July. If they cut their budget, obviously their allotments would be less than what was expected. Now there are I've been in the central government before, so usually you either cut something. Personnel, you can cut personnel, and that I've done before to pay operating expenses. But I think that's the reason why the central government is behind, because based on what she said, that OMB had cut their allotments. So
may I speak as well? This is Clendenin.
Sure.
Not only have they cut our allotments, we haven't gotten an allotment. So we haven't been receiving regular allotments just because of it's largely due in part to COVID-19 because we're not getting any revenues in. So one of the ways they're still trying to ensure they make payroll, etc., and fill this almost $150 million gap is to cut budgets of many entities, and they're releasing allotments sparingly. So we don't foresee our next allotment before June, at which time we are hopeful we could make some payments. Our intent, and I'm sure the same for justice, is not to pay, but to be able to pay when we can. It's just that we don't have the funding readily available at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Clendening. Any other questions for the administrator? Hearing none. Committee reports.
None.
I don't think we have any for the budget committee.
Okay. Attorney Williams, the final update on the board manual. Attorney Smith resubmitted. She had no further corrections. So do we move it into the process for accepting it, or since we've already made all corrections, Attorney Smith has looked at it and we've concurred that everything is in place, what's the next step?
Well, does the policy committee need to meet to discuss?
That's what I need to find out.
I would suggest that the policy committee have a meeting, make sure everybody's on the same page. Everybody has reviewed all of the recommended changes and are in agreement, or you work those out. Once the committee has done that, the committee needs to vote on it and make a recommendation to submit it to the full board for the full board's review and action.
Okay. Thank you. Policy committee, we're gonna schedule a meeting for next week. Check the availability of everyone, and then it'll be on the agenda for June. Trustee Smith, no committee report.
Madam Chair, I do not have any for the development committee because we're not developing anything right now.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for committee reports. Treasurer's report. Ms. Jeremiah, you up? Ms. Jeremiah, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. Good morning, Board Chair, other trustees. This is the government employees retirement system schedule of receipts and disbursements for the month ending April 30th, 2020. Receipts from collections, loan repayment, $2,159,055. Year to date, $12,053,454. Rent from tenants / utilities, $114,237. Year to date, $857,700. Rents from Havenside tenants, $18,893. Year to date, $3,061,455. Employer retirement contributions, $11,142,419. Year to date, $53,265,666. Employee retirement contributions, $5,736,183. Year to date, $29,036,195. Parking facility, $30. Year to date, $5,570. Miscellaneous, $17,886. Year to date, $11,148,701, for total collection of $19,188,703. Year to date, $109,428,742. Disbursement, annuity payment, $21,499,702. Year to date, $154,151,121. Administrative expenses, $1,578,509. Year to date, $9,366,218. Personal loans, 35,013. Year-to-date, 197,923. Mortgage loans, 19,896. Year-to-date, 157,174. Retiree loans, 1,294. Year-to-date, 20,796. $1 for auto loans, year-to-date, $12. There's nothing for land loans. Refund of contributions, 486,908. Year-to-date, 6,234,489. Allotments to WICO/management fees, 503,965. Year-to-date, 1,378,925. For a total disbursement of 24,125,288. Year-to-date, 171,506,658. For a net cash deficit of 4,936,584. Year-to-date, net cash deficit 62,077,916. That's in the reading of the report.
Thank you, Ms. Jeremiah. Trustees, any questions for the treasurer?
No.
Well, as usual, I comment on the contributions versus annuities. Again, this month we didn't have double-digit disparity, but how much longer is that going to last? So that with contributions by the employer is still up. Is that well, we know with COVID now we're not sure, but are they now playing catch up, or is that they're paying for past balances? Because they did 11 million last month. So is that still playing catch up, or is that something they're going to be doing currently?
I think everyone is probably caught up now. So I don't think we are going to see this big amount anymore, because I think everyone is caught up now.
Yeah. So we're going to go back to that double digit or the double annuity over contribution, because it's nice to see where we were less than $5 million over in payment than we had in contributions. But, historically, we normally have to pay out 10 million or more that we take in. Last month, it was like actually under 5 million. If that was the case, we may actually be able to survive a little longer, but we know drawdowns are probably going to be coming again shortly. We hope this government takes this seriously and take into consideration that we're continuing to drain the system.
Well, and I just requested a drawdown for the next payroll, so yeah.
Yeah. So we just hope that they just keep passing this out and sharing with our community. Understand, since the senators aren't taking it seriously, we just have to get the community to understand where we are and how we got there and what's going to be needed in order to get us out of it. Hearing no further questions, trustees. Investment officer report,
Yep,
Mr. Henderson.
We need to accept the treasurer's report.
Sorry, yes, yeah. I forgot. Hearing no further questions, can I get a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
Madam Chair, make a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Second.
It's been moved by trustees. Mr. Smith, Mr. Nibbs?
Trustee Colwood,
Yes.
Trustee Bowery,
Not voting.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Liger,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Callender,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. 5 yes, 1 not voting, 1 absent.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Henderson, you're up.
Thank you. Good morning, trustees, Madam Chair. An update of the investment fund performance as of April 30th, 2020. A total plan returned 2.2% for the month. Total equity returned 13% for the month and was in line with its benchmark as our equity markets rallied in April, as opposed to the decline that we saw for the first quarter from January to March. Total fixed income was up 1.7%, but slightly underperformed its benchmark by 10 basis points. And our total alternatives had a negative 0.6% return. Our Russell 1000 index fund was up 13%, so had a pretty good month on the overall large cap index. Pew Capital returned 2.4% and outperformed its benchmark by 60 basis points. Our US debt index returned 1.8%, and our TIPS, or US TIPS portfolio, returned 2.8%. So we pretty much had a good rally across all asset classes for the month of April. What did that constitute in terms of cash flow? So we ended the month at approximately 555 million in total assets. Bear in mind this total amount excludes the member loans program and also our St. Thomas and St. Croix complexes. So if we look at the snapshot, we had a beginning market value of about 558 million. We had a net cash flow of about 15 million that we took out to pay benefits. We had income of about negative 251,000, but we did have a gain of about 12.5 million that kind of offset that cash flow that we saw for the month, thus ending us at about roughly 555 million for the end of the month, April 30th. As it pertains to fees, investment management, custodian, and consulting fees for the month to date, we paid 114,000. Year to date, we've paid out about 207,000 in fees, and fiscal year to date, we've paid out 339,000 in fees. As it pertains to securities lending, month to date, we earned about $800. Fiscal year to date, about $1,900. So month over month, we still had a slight decline in assets as we continue to see that steady decline in our assets. That concludes my presentation for the month.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Trustees, any questions for our investment officer? Okay, hearing none.
Just one quick question. For overall performance year to date for the entire portfolio is what in terms of percent and dollars?
The year to date?
Yes.
So year to date, overall performance, and of course, this excludes member loans and also accounted for our office complexes. So year to date, total performance is about 1%, or 0.9%. That includes equity, fixed income, and also our local alternative assets.
For the overall portfolio?
Correct.
And it's just the investment asset. That doesn't count any fixed asset, any.
It includes that number includes everything except for the member loans and our St. Thomas and St. Croix office complexes. So all assets excluding those three.
Oh, okay. And that's what the 500 million is, or?
Yeah, the 555 million would be all of the assets excluding those that I mentioned prior. Okay. So the member loans, our office complex, St. Thomas office complex, and the St. Croix office complex.
Okay.
All right.
That's a far cry from when I first came home, when it was 1.2 billion when I came home.
But Trustee Calwood, if you look at the graph on the NAV report, and it goes back to April 2011, you can see where April 2011 we were about 1.1 billion, and we've steadily declined to this point.
Yep.
So
I'm watching it. Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
My pleasure.
One question for Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson, in regards to the relationship and communication with the managers that we still have on board and with BlackRock and the custodian, communication still in manner?
Yeah, yes, Trustee Smith. I communicate monthly, and I'm sure Mikita communicates monthly with our current managers. So we don't have any issues at all on that front.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And none of the managers are experiencing any employee changes or challenges with COVID. They haven't submitted anything with their offices and their work based on what's happening.
We have not received any communication from the managers indicating that they've been having any issues.
Okay, that would be interesting to see how that goes as we continue to deal. I know they're about to open back up the trading floor for human trading, for in-person trading. Or they just opened it back up.
With a skeleton crew, I would say. So it's going to be a challenge moving forward until we get a vaccine for this virus. It's going to be a challenge moving forward to normalcy.
Okay. All right. So we go. Old business. We continue. Mr. Nibbs, Makita is going to be doing the presentation and update, or?
They are on the line.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Hi, Gustavo.
Good morning. This is Leo.
Hi, Leo. We still have the COVID facial.
Oh, yes.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I was just, we just joined, and we sent yesterday a presentation that we are going to go over a few slides of that. However, before starting with the presentation, I would like to add some color to the last comment about news and any developments on the managers that are on our roster. So this is one area that, first of all, making sure that the system has enough liquidity and that the assets are invested in ways that are appropriate for the situation that the system is. The other aspect that we monitor vividly, I would say, is the situation with the managers and making sure that any changes, mostly changes in flows, right? Outflows in managers that could actually have an impact on us not being able to get our monies out. That was a situation in 2008. So for that, our research team is conducting pretty much every day surveys with all the managers that are on our client rosters. So monitoring inflows and outflows. So far, we've seen a very different scenario than what it was in 2008. Managers, in fact, have not seen significant outflows. Net, actually, the majority has actually report inflows of money. So because you have, if you think about it, when you think about, one of the few tools that we have as advising our clients is actually rebalancing back to your targets. And in a scenario like this, in where you see like the equities went down big time, the fixed income assets went up big time, when you're rebalancing, you're moving out of fixed income back in equities. So in general, you've seen managers moving seeing inflows. Even fixed income managers, because in terms of the flight to safety, as it's called, also had moved money towards those fixed income asset classes. So overall, in general, managers have seen so far net inflows within their strategies. So we are not at this point foreseeing any major problems in that regard. However, we should be cautious and realize that the situation continues to be very fluid, and as Mr. Henderson mentioned before, until we don't have a vaccine or a treatment, it is very difficult to try to assess, somehow of back to a relatively new normal. And even without that, the impact on the growth worldwide has been so significant. We just saw the news, another 2.5 or almost 2.5 million people claim unemployment in the past week, which actually reflects the past 2 weeks ago. So even without that, the back to normal in terms of growth will be a challenge. So no issues for now in the short term. However, it really depends on the duration of it. The system in general is invested in managers that has substantial liquidity, and they're big enough, and in asset classes that are very conservative. So no, we don't predict any issues on that regard in the short term. So within the same note, if you have I'm assuming you have the presentation in front of you. We're getting some feedback. Oh, there you go. Or not. Probably will make sense if we can all go into mute.
I think there's feedback coming from the boardroom, St. Thomas.
Let's see if that helped.
Yes, it
Apparently,
did.
Yeah. It did.
Okay, good.
Great. So if you have, we're back.
Try again.
I will try back again. If we jump into
That would be good if we were playing music at the time, but not good for virtual. DJ.
Everybody else mute. That's all.
Here we go. Now it's been muted.
Oh, there you go. That was definitely St. Thomas. All right. If you have the presentation in front of you, I will ask you if you can please jump into page 5. Page 5 of 41 in the presentation that we sent has the market returns for the year-to-date, 3-year, 5, 10, and 20 years. This is as of May 8th, so given the volatility of the markets, that change. However, kind of the same pattern applies to what we see on the markets as of yesterday. You see the U.S. markets have cutting half the losses year to date of what the internationals and emerging markets had, and then you see positive numbers still within the fixed income side of the returns. One interesting data point on that chart, if you see on the 20-year column, that is the one all the way to your right, you see the first line there is the S&P 500, so the U.S. equities. In 20 years, it returned 5.7% per year for the last 20 years. If you go down to the next 5 that you see, 5.2, those are bonds, and this is 5.2 compared to 5. This is 10. So this is just as a data point to understand the significant impact of what these last 3 months had in the U.S. equities. So at this point, this is pretty much telling us that you would be having the same return for the last 20 years per year, pretty much the same if you invested in U.S. equities or in fixed income. So that's kind of, of course, this is just a data point. This is not telling us anything that we can build upon, but it's just gives us a sense of the significant impact of the decline on the market during the last 3 months.
What's our return on our portfolio over that period?
So the return in your portfolio compared to that, it's let me give you numbers. So for the year to date, it's pretty good compared to the overall market, and the rest of the clients it's positive 1.6. So we are in the positive territory. For the fiscal year to date, it's 3.6. Since inception, going back, per year, the return has been 8.8%. So
I think it's important to note also, Gustavo, that those performance numbers don't include the local assets.
They do not include the local assets. These are only the assets that are liquid, that are tradable. But just in comparison to what the chart stated, we saw in the 20 years, 5.2, 5.7. The portfolio, it's 8.8. They are not exactly matching the dates. However, just to have an idea, which is also a statement in which Mr. Henderson was talking about since at the moment that we joined, about the assets going down from 1.2 billion to the stage that we are today, like 500, even though we have such a splendid returns. So definitely this is a statement to show that, unfortunately, in the case of the system, again, it's not a matter of investment, it's a matter of cash, lack of cash in and cash out, right? A matter of cash flows. So,
Trustee Boris, you're saying something. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I have a quick question. One of the things that the board is usually, one of the things that the board is usually accused of is not is failing to properly invest. So if you're accused of that and you want to compare the board's investment performance over 20 years, which one of these metrics would you compare to, if any?
I'm sorry, I didn't have a great connection. We were talking. You were asking us what should be the comparison between the system returns.
Yeah, I'm asking if you're asked, if you're trying to explain or to defend the board's investment performance or the system's investment performance over the 20-year period, which one of these metrics would you compare it to, and what would be ours?
So there are several metrics that you can use. A good one to compare to your peers, right? It should be, as we did in several times, would be to use a peer comparison and see how the rest of the peers within the same assets under management perform during the period of time. With the caveat at this point that 20 years ago the system has twice and a half as much assets than it has today. But that would be a comparison. The other one is asset class per asset class as a benchmark comparison, as it has been during the history of the plan. So there are several ways in which you can compare the last 20 years performance. When you see compared to other systems within the same number of assets during the last 20 years, all the charts, of course, is a little bit of what we call in the industry endpoint bias, right? Depending exactly what is the range that you're talking. But in general, in the last 20 years, has been performing in the top, I would say in the top decile or 20%.
Gustavo, didn't we have a chart similar to that several years ago when we were, I think it was presented to the legislature, showing that our system actually have done better than some of our peers on the mainland, even after the 2008 mess? I think we had something like that before.
Sure. Yeah, we have, and definitely we can look into it in the time period right now. Actually, we'll probably look even better, given the positive performance that we have in the last quarter. That can be put together. But so we've shown that several times.
Yeah, this is Leo. So to give you some perspective, the system return over the last 5 years. Let's see, it returned 5.8%, and over the last 10 years, 7.1% annualized. So when you look at peers, looking at public funds with similar size, between 250 million to 1 billion in assets, the median one returned 3.3% over 5 years. So again, you returned 5.8, so significantly more. You rank at the very top of that database.
So I would like for you to send us something. I mean,
yes, of course.
I expect the debate is going to ramp up fairly soon, especially with the coming election season.
Yes, we can provide that. Absolutely.
The debate about the issue with the GERS, and there's going to be a lot of finger pointing about why the GERS is where it's at now. And I know for sure one of the accusations is going to be that GERS didn't properly manage its portfolio. And I'd like for you to send us some metrics that we could look to either counter that claim or put that claim in perspective or something.
We will send that, no problem. We have that data. We stopped reporting that a couple of years ago because as you move into more of a dynamic asset allocation, you were investing very differently than peers, but nonetheless, performance is what it is. The performance has been very, very strong. It plots towards the top decile, top quartile, no matter what time period you look at. So it's definitely not an issue of performance. We will provide that. We'll send that through Mr. Henderson shortly after the meeting.
Trustee Barry, because for years we have to make that claim. Every time there was something going on, somebody, and it was almost always one of our elected leaders, would start spreading that propaganda about bad investments by the board. So I would make a comment all the time when we compared the contributions collected with the monthly annuity payment. and we paid out twice as much that we collected, I would remind them that extra money that we had to pay out came from the same bad investments that they keep complaining about, because the investment returns is what has paid our annuities for several years, for decades almost. So
Yeah, I mean,
every time they said that, I would let them know those bad investments is what's paying their annuity for our retirees, because we pay out twice as much as we collect in contributions.
yeah, I mean, you started preaching to the choir here on that one, but as I said, it's going to be an issue, and I'd like to be armed with some
data,
some metrics that everybody respects.
Awesome.
One of the points I've always made to individuals who ask me that question, I always go back to the facts that let's say in 2009, we had assets of about 1.2 billion. We've withdrew about 1.1 billion between that point and now, and our portfolio is still up about it still has assets about 555 million. I mean, if you do the simple math,
I
there's
agree
no
with
way.
I agree with you. The issue with that is that by the time you get through that calculation, you've lost your everybody.
I understand.
You know, so I mean, I've been there and done this kind of thing.
Well, technically, we were supposed to have run out of cash a long time ago.
When you start getting into those kind of calculations and stuff, but you've already lost most people. I would like to be able to just say simply that, listen, here's the proof. Look at our performance compared to, and whatever you got to give me compared to, and I'll end the conversation there. You start talking about getting into those weeds, then you start talking about who's to blame, and then I'm going to say, well, you're the one, you legislature are the ones who said we could invest in those kinds of things because you wanted to increase the return, and you get into more risky things, then higher return come with higher risk. But you lose the argument there. You start trying to explain, you take. I just want to say, listen, here are the metrics that people use to measure performance. And here's where we stand or sit compared to, and give me some comparisons.
But Trustee Bory, here's something else that should make you chuckle. The legislature, at one of their meetings, was it year before, said that maybe GRS needs to hire the advisors that are being used by, and they named several companies, several pension funds on the mainland, without realizing that the same advisors that they recommended, that they were referring to, were the same ones that we had long before the other pension funds had them.
Well, that's the issue. See, I mean, a lot of when you get into the senators and stuff, those guys reading from text messages that they get on the phone. A lot of those, I mean, you could see it when you look at the hearings. And they ask the question and they have no understanding, or no most of them, no basis for the underlying question.
Maybe
I'd rather not have to get into Mr. Henderson. I'd rather not have to get into having to explain, well, if you go back here and if you look at this side and you look at what we pay out and what we pay. Here are the metrics that are universally accepted as measures of performance. And here's where we stand.
Totally understand, but in the most simplistic form, I tend to get it over to individuals when I tell them that, tell them that way.
Okay, that's fine.
Do both.
Go ahead.
So we will be happy to provide that information. I really sincerely hope that this time we have open ears on the other side to understand. This will be not the first attempt of presenting the information, and it has presented in several ways. So hopefully hopefully now a new voice will have a better understanding on the other side. But happy to present that information back again. No problem at all.
Okay.
If you please flip to page 9 of the report that we sent, 9 of 41. This page from a specific data perspective just shows the different in programs that were put together back in 2008 on the left-hand side compared to the programs that have been put together so far for this crisis. The amount of money that is dedicated also it's very different, and it's significantly increased from one crisis to the other. But the point that we're trying to stress here is not just that there's a lot that has been done, and there's a lot that can be done as well, but it's the fact that this can perhaps explain some of the what it seems disconnections between what the U.S. equities market has been doing in the last couple of weeks and what it seems like a different story, right, when you see that we are moving towards a 20% unemployment in our country. So there's a lot of that has to be said about the effectiveness of the programs that have been put together and the reaction that Wall Street has towards those measurements, in which has been pretty positive in general, regardless of the effectiveness of the discussion of the effectiveness of the plans in the long term or not. If this in the long term will help or not. In the short term, the financial markets are taking this in a good note. And that might be one of the explanations why you see what it seems this discrepancy between where the U.S. equities are going and what is the reality down the street. Let me see, I don't want to go through every single page, but perhaps page 12, which, I mean, the good news is, this is a worldwide problem, and the policy responses have been seen around the world. The major economic blocs around the world have put together measures similar, not in size, but similar in scope of what the U.S. is doing to try to keep, at this point, trying to keep the liquidity of the market. That is the case, trying to keep the money out of the market. When you start, that is exactly when I started seeing like the biggest problems within the financial markets, when you're seeing liquidity going out as it was, and that was exactly what happened in 2008. You see outflows going out of the financial markets. In this case, it's not a financial markets issue, so that's the reason why you see governments and federal reserves and central banks around the world putting these programs together to try to solve the liquidity issue that this impact is bringing to the table. I will ask you if you can jump into page 14. This is a chart of the U.S. curves that shows between 3 months and 30 years what are the different data points to plot this curve. On the top, you have what was that curve that was projected in May of 2019, so a year ago. Then the green coming down, what you see that the forecast of the curve would be in December of 2019, and then you see a big step down of the whole U.S. curve, the sentiment in May of 2019. The shorter part of the curve, the 3 months to the 2-3 year, that is pretty much dictated by the movements of the Federal Reserve, while the longer part of the curve is pretty much the sentiment of the economists about what the future looks like. This decrease here has helped the U.S. Virgin Islands system, because we have a big chunk of our investments in bonds. Between cash and bonds, you have around 80% of the investments. So the lower the yield curve, the higher the prices. So that helped us to get that positive return that we have fiscal year to date and calendar year to date on our returns for sure. And as you see, you know, the sentiments have not. I mean, what we're seeing is that, you know, the curve hasn't, you know, moved widely, and for that to happen, it would mean that it would be some inflationary expectation, which is honestly in the short to medium term, it's really hard to see. Even so, I would say at this point in the long term, but you can argue in the long term, you know, if the global supply chains strategies that we have today change in the future from going from global to more domestic and localized, that would probably bring prices up with inflationary trends. But that's long term. In the short to medium term, it's very hard to see some inflationary pressures that would change the curve. Let me jump into one or two more slides. Slide 18, please. So we've seen these economic impacts. We've seen the supply chain disruptions. We see the impact in the labor force, consumer sentiment, just people because they are locked down or don't feel like going out. I think that this is we all share this sentiment, even though some of us have the luxury of having a paycheck every couple of weeks and still having a job and being healthy. This sentiment of going out and spending money, probably we all share the sentiment of not doing that in the short term. And then the wealth effect, that is a little more in the medium to long term, which is the effect that a decline like this will have in people's you know, 401k monies for us in the private industry, and definitely in the pension plan industry, in the pension plan arena as well. You know, we see, I think it's we start seeing more and more, you know, municipalities, state governments, cities starting to have conversation with pension plans about, you know, tax revenue dollar is going to be hard to find in the short term, and how that is going to affect different cities, states, and municipalities' budget, and the impact of that will have in the pension plans. That plus, you know, the impact that they already had on the investment side. So it's definitely there are still question marks, a lot of challenges ahead. Very difficult to predict one side or the other. I think that the more the best that we can argue at this point is that it will be very difficult to have any sense of coming back to some sense of normality until we don't have at least a treatment. Page please 21. This is unemployment. Not shockingly, you see that line going straight up on the month of April, and we are adding another $2.5 million. 2.5 million people unemployed as of today. Definitely not the 5 million that we saw in the first week, but it seems steady at 2.5 for the time being. Is that the whole representation? No, that's up for debate. But definitely unemployment is moving towards closer to the 20% unemployment at some point in the year. Page 25, please. As you probably see, and I don't know the stage in the U.S. Virgin Islands, but you know, in the continent, some cities have started to open up. One with more success than the other. Can give you the point of view of my state of Florida, and in particular Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade has opened for a couple of weeks now. Essentials and some restaurants. hair salons and stuff. And in general, what you're seeing evolving in the last 2 weeks, it's been initial peak of some customers going into the shops, and then a sharp decline back again, people not feeling comfortable going up. The other anecdotal point is that I actually count yesterday. I was driving around my son to tennis courts back up and down, and counting less than 20% of the people that I saw walking, jogging, cycling on the street wearing a mask. So this is unfortunately having people having this sense of comfort of going out without a mask, and that will probably increase the possibility of spreading the virus back again, and then we have another peak. So I mean, next page, if we are looking forward, so we have the questions. It's going to be another second peak or not, how big that's going to be. Unemployment seems to be steady, so that means that people are not going to be out consuming back again. Central banks are just keep pushing money out into the market to keep that liquidity that we mentioned before. So that's kind of good news for the markets, keeping the liquidity out. So what that means is, again, this volatility that we have seen, right? 2 days market up, then a sharp decline, then going up back again, sharp decline. So, whatever is the future, an L shape, I think at this point everyone discarded like a V-shaped recovery. At this point, the consensus is more like a U-shaped recovery. Someone are talking an L shape, hopefully not, but stagnation, which is the worst scenario. But that it will be the shape, a smoothen shape, but probably if you see it with a microscope, it will be days going up and down, and this will continue this volatility, whatever shape that we have in the future, until we don't have more of a clear result in terms of some type of treatment. And to finalize, to finalize on this part of the report, page 28, please, if you don't mind. Let me disclose here that this does not tend to be statistically significant enough data to say that we can actually conclude a certain trend out of this data, because the universe of data that is down here, that is all the declines in the market that we have, it's pretty slim from a statistical perspective. However, when you go back in history, and the history that we have numbers on, and review, you have like an average of from the top to the bottom of the markets came down between 36 and 33%, and which is exactly what happened here. We came down 34% this year, and then you see around between whatever is 25 to 40 months of recovery to be back at the levels that it was before. We are not trying to drive any conclusions other than, some clients ask us, what are your thoughts? And it's, again, the answer is very difficult to predict. We are not trying to predict here with this information. However, it's another data point to add to the general knowledge. I think that concludes this part of the report. Next, we have some performance, but I will open up at this point if there are any questions, any concerns, any comments.
I have a question. When was the last time we did that comparison of metrics? Do you have any handy, or how soon can you give us an update on that?
I have to apologize, but you get totally cut on your question. If you can give it back again.
We had a discussion a little earlier about some comparative metrics, some metrics you use to compare our portfolio performance, and
yeah, I can address that.
Okay.
So let me try something here very quickly. Can you see the screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
Leo.
Yes.
Okay, so one more second. Let me try something better here. I was trying to show the full screen, but anyway, you can see it here, I would assume. Can you, let me see. Pardon me, I'm not an expert with Zoom.
Hey, Leo, yeah, click on view and go to full screen. That should help you.
View, full screen mode. Okay, so what you can see here is the comparative performance that I think you were referring to. So this data comes quarterly. So at the end of March, June, September, and December, we can compare the performance of the system versus peers. And in the terms of peers, we categorize, there's some categories that can predefine in the universe data set. The closest to GERS is public funds, public pension funds between $250 million to $1 billion. That's the closest, smallest, best comparison point. It includes roughly 68 peers in the US. And what you can see is the performance for GERS is very strong. It's the green dot. So when you look at the last quarter ended March 31st, 2020, it was the best performing fund. The parenthesis at the bottom is the ranking, number one. As you look at 1 year, number one, 3 years, number one, 5 years, number one. And if you look all the way to the right over 10 years, it ranked 21st. So still very, very strong, no matter what time period. If you look at it at different time periods, it's always been the case that the performance for GERS was anywhere from good to great, depending on the ending point. Performance was never at the bottom or an issue, no matter how you look at it or slice it or at what point in time you look or how back in time you go. As Gustavo mentioned, when you go back since inception into the 80s, the fund generated a return of 8.8%. So my team just calculated this very quickly. We have this data. We certainly will email this one-page addendum after the meeting ends. Does this answer the question to you?
Yes, yeah.
Very good. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen and continue with the presentation, unless there's any other questions at this moment. Okay, so here in none, this is quite quickly. I'm on page 31 out of 41. The portfolio is very conservatively positioned. This has been built like this by design several years ago, understanding that performance alone wouldn't get GERS out of a path to potential insolvency because there was an imbalance between the amount of money coming in and the amount of money going out, and that imbalance has been occurring for over 20 years. I think at one point in time, when we did an analysis together with the actuary, the system needed to generate returns that were like 15% every year and then increase to 25% every year for 20 years to maintain the current status. And that is impossible. At no time in history has that ever taken place with that consistency and that high level rate of return. So when we know that the performance alone cannot help you, the best thing to do was to try to moderate any major impact from a drawdown, or in other words, any major impact from a correction that would cause for the potential insolvency to occur much earlier than planned. And so what we've been working for is towards a soft landing at a known date well into the future, as opposed to uncertain and potentially earlier because of a crash. That would have indeed happened had we been more aggressively invested. So the portfolio has been cut back from risky assets more and more, and you can see that on the next page, page 32. Just about 3 years ago, more than half of the portfolio was invested in equities and is being cut gradually. So that has meant we can still participate, but on the other hand, we are cutting the exposure every quarter. And the performance is what we described in the prior page here, which on page 33, Gustavo threw some numbers earlier. In the month of April, we're ahead by 2.7%. For the year to date, 1.6%. For the last year, 6.4%. Fiscal year to date, 3.6%. And when you look at 3 and 10 years, it's upper 7%. So overall, very, very strong performance with very little volatility. So another measure, when you look at comparative performances, what has been my performance over the last 5 or 10 years? And in your case, we know, for example, over 10 years, it's about 7%. Well, I would argue that the amount of risk the system took to trade at 7% was lower than many of the peers. So the performance is not good on an absolute level, but it's very, very strong as well on a risk-adjusted level. Think about it. The fund did not invest in hedge funds, did not lock up a lot of assets in illiquid alternatives. It's been with, fairly simplistic tool from stock and bonds primarily and a good asset allocation. So very pleased overall with the performance of the fund. The fund is quite simple today because we've been redeeming. In the last quarter, redemptions took place with a couple of index fund strategies, so that today, if you're on page 34, this is what you own. Other than the local assets, you own one broad index fund, which is the Russell 1000 index, the largest 1,000 stocks in the US by size, by market capitalization. You have 2 index funds in the fixed income space. One is the bond market index. The other one is TIPS, which is just treasury linked for inflation. And then you have one actively managed strategy, which is Pew, a manager out of Seattle, that has had a good performance overall. It's beat the benchmark marginally, taking also very limited risk. Then you have 2 legacy private equity funds that are towards the end of their lives, and they are in the distribution phase, returning capital to you, and the exposure there is about $13 million. So this portfolio is very simple. If you skip a couple of pages, you see how much it costs to run this portfolio. It's 7 basis points. So very, very efficient. This, of course, excludes the private equity fund of funds, which are more complex to figure out the actual cost because there is performance-based fee that gets recalculated every quarter. But overall, it's very simple, very low cost, very efficient, and is working out very well for the system. With that, I conclude my remarks and open up the floor for any questions. Thank you for your time.
Steve, any questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question. Maybe Leo and Henderson. If I look at page 30 of the report where it talks about, I believe, the balance of the GRS assets, and unless I'm misreading the report said it's 492 million plus, correct?
Correct.
But in Mr. Henderson's report, for the same period, it's listed it as 555 million. Can somebody explain to me why the difference?
Yes, I'll be pleased to. Our report only includes the non-local assets. We've never been retained to advise on those assets, regardless of whether they are the GERS complex, Havenside, or the loan programs, etc. So we only advise on everything else beyond that, and the amount of those assets as of the end of the reporting measurement point was the 492 million. The discrepancy is what Mr. Henderson alluded earlier. Those local assets, again, excluding in his report the 2 properties where GERS conducts its business and the member loan programs.
But I thought Henderson said that his report also excluded that. Did I misunderstand that, Glenville?
Yes.
No, you're not. You're misunderstanding what Leo's saying. Leo's numbers or Nikita's performance numbers does not include our local assets at all. My report includes everything except the member loans program on our St. Thomas and St. Croix office complex.
Okay.
What are some examples of that other stuff?
Havenside, things like that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trustee Calwood.
No, go ahead, Mr. Hensley. Go ahead.
Okay, so my numbers, other than the assets that Nikita reports, would also include Haven site. It would include the two pieces of raw land and our local loans, which consist of Kazi right now.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Makita? Gentlemen, thank you very, very much.
Mr. Henderson, could you give me a call after this thing, or will you give me a number? I need to get a little more clarity on this issue.
Oh, no problem. I'll text you my number.
Okay.
In the chat.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be there to help you. So let us know how we can help. We'll send you that one page with the comparative performance to Mr. Henderson shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your day. Be safe.
Thanks.
Next item of business, Haven Site Mall update. Mr. Nitz.
You have to go into executive session, man.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I had that written down wrong. My fault. All right, so the next portion of our meeting will be closed to the public for matters pertaining to trade secrets or financial or commercial information, personal or legal matters, or matters whose premature disclosure will frustrate the implementation of the proposed agency action. I need a motion to enter into executive session, please.
I'll move to go into executive session.
Second.
Trustee Calwood,
Yes.
Trustee Barry,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Liger, Trustee Liger, Trustee Liger,
He's a mute.
He's trying.
You need to unmute.
Yes.
Trustee McDonald absent, Trustee Smith, Trustee Smith
I think she stepped away for a minute.
absent, Chairman Callender, Chairman Callender,
He was just there.
Not hearing him.
I think he's voting yes, but he's not.
Mr. Callender, we're not hearing you. Raise your finger or do a thumbs up.
At the address is $60 for process server fees. Add that.
He has said yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
add it to that.
5 yes, 2 absent.
Pedro, mute your phone.
We taking a 5-minute break?
Like a recess for 5 minutes.
We're waiting for the attorney to zoom in to go over her letter, so that's fine.
Well, then maybe you can do.
Give Mr. Torrey a chance to stretch.
Maybe you can.
Okay, I texted her to zoom in, and she has the information. I don't see her on yet.
Okay, so Mr. Nebbs, a 5-minute recess so Mr. Torrey can stretch your fingers and we'll await the participants.
Okay, she's joined.
Mr. Torrey still needs to stretch.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to Haven site.
Okay, and Madam Chair, I would just ask that Mr. Henderson be able to remain for this section.
Accepted.
So we are taking a break?
You don't need one?
Yeah, I do, but I just wanted to make
Yes,
sure.
we're taking 5 minutes so you can stretch.
Thank you.
Okay. Sherry, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, so if you just hold on.
Okay. It's 11:52, 11:57. Please return.